I think that's my favorite part is teaching and showing people that something they had thought that they couldn't do, they are 100% capable of, and then listening to their stories after the class or the training or whatever is over, emailing back and saying, you know what? I looked at the financial statements and they make sense. I understand what they are trying to tell me.
Welcome to the Nonprofit Nook, the podcast for nonprofit leaders, board members, and community changemakers who want to build stronger, smarter organizations. I'm your host, Wendy Kidd, a longtime business owner and nonprofit leader, and I'm here to bring you real talk, real tools, and real stories to help you thrive in the nonprofit world. I'll be talking with local nonprofit leaders, community changemakers, and experts in everything from board development to fundraising and digital tools, sharing real stories and simple strategies you can actually use. Because running a nonprofit is hard, but you don't have to do it alone. Let's get started. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Elizabeth Searing, an associate professor and fellow to the Venice Stewart Professorship in Nonprofit Management and Leadership at UT Dallas. Elizabeth's research centers on nonprofit and social enterprise resilience, how organizations can build financial strength, adapt in times of crisis, and use data to make smarter decisions. She's also co-editor of Resilience and the Management of Nonprofit Organizations, A New Paradigm, and a passionate educator shaping the next generation of nonprofit leaders. Thank you so much for joining me today, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much for having me on, Wendy. I really appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to the opportunity to talk about our topic today.
Of course. Guys, I met Elizabeth because I was looking for my own nonprofit education, and she was just a delight and a huge resource. So I was so blessed when she said yes to come on the podcast. So we are going to jump right in. All right. So let's start with the big picture. Why do you think formal education in nonprofit leadership and management is so critical in today's sector?
So I think that it boils down to two kind of main reasons. So the first are the goods. Like, what do you
Hmm.
get in formal education? And you get a whole bunch of stuff. So you get knowledge about best practices, you get exposed to new ideas, you get an expanded network, both in terms of the faculty that you meet, in addition to the new peers and people that you'll have in the class. So those are the formal things, the goods. But I think you
Right.
also get proof of the goods, which is increasingly important in this kind of post AI society that we're entering right now, in that you're getting those things, but you're also going to have some kind of formal educational credential, whether it's a degree or it's a certificate or something, saying that in fact you have done this. And it's proof that you didn't just get on YouTube or stay at a Holiday Inn Express or something like that. And so I think both of those are worth a lot in today's job market.
Yeah, for sure. I completely agree with you. When I look at the job force out there as a board member and we're looking at new executive directors or things like that, it's a whole lot of, well, I learned on the job, and there's not a whole lot of formal education that I'm seeing as often. So I think it's a huge leg up in the job search field if you actually have formal education. I mean, many nonprofit professionals learn on the job. So what do you see as the biggest benefits of structured education versus experience alone?
And I think so. I don't want to talk bad about learning on the job. One,
Right.
because we all have to do it. There's no
Absolutely.
amount of formal education you can get that is going to totally prepare you for everything that you are going to see. And I think this is especially true because my specialty is finance and resilience, which means a lot of what I study is an organization or a person be confronted by some kind of crisis and having to react. And there's preparation that can go into that, but there's also learning as you go. And so there's nothing that is going to take away from the, I would say, the benefits of you learning on the job and pivoting and your own lived experience. But there are things that you can do to prepare yourself and your organization better for those moments where you are learning on the job, because there's a difference between surviving or getting through it and doing something that actually puts you and the people that you serve in a better situation. And so I think that's the biggest benefit, is that it prepares you. Structured education gives you a larger toolbox for being able to handle the moments where you have to learn on the job. So it's not mutually exclusive.
Absolutely. And my personal experience is when you've got that more in-depth training, you have more of a well to draw on when it becomes to that on the job crisis training that we all experience. So, and including what you said earlier, which is the network that you can draw on. You can call those people that you got that training from and say, hey, I'm facing this crisis. Any tips, any ideas on how I can spend this or do this? So yeah, I think that's great. And on the flip side, what are some kind of the risks or missed opportunities when organizations undervalue professional training or leadership development, when the board members are hiring and they're not looking at hiring based off of education, they're only going off of experience?
And I think that when we talk about undervaluing professional training or leadership development, I think that especially right now, because we are in just wild times when it comes to running a nonprofit organization right now, I think that being able to invest in professional training or leadership development is actually one of the ways that you can both help your workforce feel valued, but also it is something that the organization is going to see benefits from. So if you undervalue this kind of training, I think one, golden opportunity to show your staff or your volunteers or your board how much you value their own learning. Two, I think you're going to have staff turnover problems, because if you never invest in your workforce, whether that's a paid or a volunteer workforce, then you're ignored. You feel like the organization isn't vested in you. And so you're probably going to start having turnover problems. Plus, you're just going to see, I would say, service and management kind of stagnation in a way. And I
Right.
think that it's when you think about some of the professions that are more tightly regulated, dentists, like social workers, like engineers, like accountants, a lot of these professions have required continuing education credits. It's not that you take classes and then you get an additional degree. It's you take classes and you get to maintain the professional credential you have. And that's because it's just so important to continue to learn, just so that you can better serve your clients or your service recipients, the people that you're working with. Our field, unless you're one of those subdisciplines, doesn't have this kind of regulation credentialing requirement, but that doesn't take away the fact that we still continue to need to learn in order to best serve our communities. And so I think that's all of those are big missed opportunities if the board or upper management doesn't recognize the benefits of investing and continuing to grow as a professional.
I completely agree. Like, this is a sore point for me because I fully believe in investing in the education of your people. If you are looking to hire somebody and they have the experience but not the education, maybe that's part of the hiring requirement, is we also are going to send you to school so
Mhm.
that you get the education as well as the experience. And I feel like nonprofit leaders, they focus a lot on fundraising and programs. They don't really, focus on anything else. How can we get boards and executives to start viewing leadership education as an investment in their mission's long-term success? Have you had any examples of how you can kind of show people this is what you're going to get if you invest in your staff, in your training?
One, the leadership education and like fundraising education and like program related education, these are not mutually exclusive. So
Right.
at my university, we have courses on fundraising, we have courses on program evaluation, and they are all a part of the certificates and degrees that you can get. And even the, I would say, traditional kinds of skill areas that you were just talking about, like those are still, you could still go to classes and get credentials in those. So it's not necessarily mutually exclusive. But as far as examples go, I think that the many of the organizations that I work with, I think that this is a particular source of joy for me, are organizations that are right at the very beginning. So they're startups or they're very small and all volunteer. And normally someone is motivated to form a nonprofit organization because of something in their own narrative. So something powerful pulls you to the nonprofit sector and to give back. And a lot of times that doesn't come with training. It doesn't come with a professional credential. And so I actually my biggest sources of joy, especially in doing things like teaching finance. I love talking about finance and financial management. I respect the fact that most people did not get into the nonprofit sector to talk about finance. I think it is incredibly complicated and absolutely delicious, and I love talking to people about it. And so I love working with nonprofit entrepreneurs or all volunteer organizations that have somehow convinced themselves that they are not good with money or they're not good with numbers, and spending the time and teaching the course and showing them how accounting works and how money and resources and things flow into the organization and how it transforms into impact. And that is something that I, just as a part of my job, is something I get to experience on a regular basis, whether we're talking about the formal course I teach at Dallas, or whether it's a part of the formal capacity building that I do in the couple different programs in Texas and in Georgia. But I think that's my favorite part, is teaching and showing people that something they had thought that they couldn't do, they are 100% capable of, and then listening to their stories after the class or the training or whatever is over, emailing back and saying, you know what? I looked at the financial statements and they make sense. I understand what they are trying to tell me. Or I remember one of my students emailing me and saying, hey, you know what? I'm just an intern and I know it's been a year since I've taken your class, but I wanted you to know that I helped discover fraud at my organization. And it was because of the things that you told me to look for when we were talking about internal controls. And it just
Oh,
does not get better. I don't want to say it doesn't get better than fraud, but it doesn't get
right.
better than hearing that someone that entered the class thinking that they were going to hate it because it was all numbers, knowing that a year later that they helped catch fraud in their organization, and that could have meant the difference between the people that were receiving services continuing to receive them or that entirely
Yeah.
disappearing. It is the reason I do what I do.
I bet you see some miracles come through with all that. I mean, I've gone through the Goldman Sachs Small Business 10,000 program, and that's one of the biggest things they teach us is understanding the financial reports, right? And understanding our finances and how to budget and how to plan for growth and all of those things. And I see, the nonprofits that I have worked with, and they are not applying any of those principles. And so I know there's a very big lack of education when it comes to finances. So I can only imagine how rewarding that is for you to see that and see it coming to real life. Do you have any other specific stories you want to share, like real true examples of success for people who came into the program and learned the true education that you guys are providing for nonprofit management?
I just real quick, I want to point out that part of that is the skill base, not
Yeah.
knowing the technical definition of an asset or a
Oh,
liability.
absolutely. Yeah.
But a lot of it is also just the self-confidence and
Hmm.
the emotional journey that someone takes in learning, especially coming back as an adult learner, because a lot of the classes that I teach are in the evenings, or they're online, or they're hybrid, which means that they meet like a couple times a semester and then other stuff is online. And it's all designed to meet people where they are, potentially after a long break from school.
Yeah.
And so it's just as much, I think, about the journey of education and helping with that psychological shift that this is achievable than it is knowing what an asset is technically. Like that's a part of it. But there are numerous things I think going on, especially for adult learners that are each one, I think, as I would say joyful, but as part of the experience for both the student and for me.
Right, right. No, I completely agree with that. And I like how you relate that to the journey of the education because it is a journey. It is a huge mindset shift for a lot of us. And I think that taking that time to get to work through that is so valuable in so many aspects of life, not just working for your nonprofit. So I like how you said that. Thank you.
I was just gonna bring up one of the misconceptions I think that people might have about what education can do and can't do, why we're because I think I've said a lot of really positive things, and someone might be listening and going, of course she's saying positive things, like she works for a university, like it's part of the gig. And but I do want to mention that really the most important thing though is you have to know yourself and why you're going to get this education, and specifically what it is that you're trying to do, because there are, I think, several times that people will show up in my class and it's there as like a checkbox. I don't know anything about accounting, so I am going to take the class and the class will be inflicted on me, and then I will get done with the class and then I will know all the
Yeah.
accounting. And
Yeah.
that's not really the way it works. There has to be introspection, I think, before you get into it. And so if you approach formal education thinking that it is a checkbox or something like that, then I think you're short selling yourself a little bit. Like you need to be on board with the I need to learn something about this. I want to be able to take apart my organization's financial statements, or I want to be able to put together my organization's financial statements and be
Yeah.
willing to move forward with that. And I think that's a necessary ingredient. I think that a lot of the way that, with the appearance of AI and things like that, a lot of higher education, and honestly, a lot of education from kindergarten on up, is having to think about how students engage with material, how students are assessed, how professors come up with material in light of how easy it is to ask chat to do it. And so I think that it's causing a lot of students and professors to be very straightforward with themselves and say, okay, why am I here? If I am here to learn how to put this financial statement together, then I need to be present and show up for that. And I think that requires a lot of kind of introspection that maybe we're not used to doing so much anymore because we're always like we got somewhere to be all the time. But I think it's really essential, and it also helps you focus, I think, on the right problems. So there are many students that will show up in my class thinking that it is going to taking the finance class is going to help them be a better grant writer. Not really the same thing, not really
Right.
necessarily the same skill set, but there is a class on grant writing that you can take. And the same thing where, if you really, if what is holding you back from the promotion, you keep telling yourself it's the accounting, but maybe it's just being more comfortable talking in front of people. Yes, you'll have more opportunity to do that in a class more than likely, especially if it meets in person. There's also Toastmasters and things like that can help you work all of the different skills that you're thinking about.
Absolutely. And you mentioned AI and some of the digital tools that we now have at our disposal, right? And I feel like that kind of influences a little bit about what we actually need to learn today. So what should nonprofit leaders be focusing on? What knowledge or what skills should they really kind of be focusing on now that we have this new set of tools to work with?
I think that right now, the most important skill that a nonprofit professional or anyone working with a nonprofit needs to have, they need to know data. And I say that being deliberately all encompassing, but because I feel like in many ways we've always had to be able to tell our own story. But now, with the advent of all of these tools, we need to know data in so many more and different ways. Like, we need to know about the hardcore impact metrics that are quantifiable that some of our donors or foundations or government might be looking for. But we also need to know how to respectfully tell our service recipients stories that in a way that is both informative and motivating, but also not exploitative. And both of those are actually data related questions. And then we also need to know, I would say, more of the data handling questions. So, how do we make sure that our
Yeah.
data is secure? We are bringing in all of these different pieces of data. We've got the metrics, we've got our finances, we might have
Yeah.
health information, we have all of this, and now it's all stored on the cloud. And we need to make sure that it is not accessible, one, by good old fashioned hackers, but two, that it's not being read by Claude or any of these other agents that we might be having that are, potentially helpful, but we need to be thinking about whether or not, if you need to summarize the notes from your most recent case session, more than likely it is not okay for you to use any type of AI to help you produce that summary unless it is a licensed enterprise version. So I think that all of these are data related issues that maybe have been on the periphery, like on the sidelines in the past. Now it is, I think, the main deal because so much of what we are doing now is being made faster and more efficient with the use of these different technologies. But like, we don't 100% understand what's going on under the hood. Like, I drive my car every day. I could not build my car if I had to, but my car also isn't going to take like me somewhere that I didn't realize I was going either. And I think that's where we are. I think that's the phase we're in with some of the technology, because I know a lot of people who are using AI to do smaller kind of mundane administrative tasks, summarize a meeting, summarize this, summarize that, and not thinking about the fact that just because it's on your screen and on your computer, that you're not actually publicly sharing the information of your service recipients when you're asking for that summary. And so I think that is what we need to focus on, I think, moving forward.
I think that is such great advice. And I think it's something that people don't really think about. Again, because everything's moving so quickly. Everything is coming at us and it's like drinking from a fire hose. But this is absolutely what we need to be focusing on is what is our data? How are we protecting it? How is it driving our decisions and our technology as we're using it? So I love that. I love that. Well, I feel like I've picked your brain a lot today, but I want to ask you one more thing. What's one piece of advice you would give someone stepping into a nonprofit leadership role or executive director role?
I think that it would probably be the same advice that I give new parents, which is that it's okay. You are never going to feel ready. Like, you will never feel like now is the time where I will be 100% successful at this. I am totally assured. So it's okay. Go ahead, step forward into this role with, I would say, both humility and dedication. And I guess, what do I mean by that? So I think that don't assume that you are. So any major decision you need to make, always build a case for that. And I think that's where the humility comes in, even and
Sure.
especially if you've got all the academic degrees and credentials. 100%, you need to make sure that you are correct. So always approach decisions with humility, knowing that the decisions that you make are actually impacting individuals that are the reason that motivated you getting into this in the first place. So it's not like we are making cheeseburgers, all right? We are serving the
Right.
public. And we just need to remember that regardless of how many degrees we have, we need to have a full understanding of the impact of our decisions and build a case. But I also think that you should build a network as well, because you can do all the book research on the decision you're about to make, but also making sure that you have colleagues, former classmates, people that you have met through this or through professional associations or were your faculty or other people at your organization. Build and use those networks because
Yeah.
we still, regardless of how humble and motivated and dedicated we are, we do have to make hard decisions. And I think that this year, especially, is showing us how hard some of those decisions are going to be. So I work with people in international development, I work with people in immigration, I work with all sorts of different activity areas in the nonprofit sector. And the reason that we got in and the people we serve haven't changed. They still
Yeah.
need what they need. But we are having to use different management, organizational, fundraising, policy, different tools in order to continue serving those people. And so it's a big job and it can feel overwhelming, but we can do it. We can do it as a part of a network, and we can do it with as large and comprehensive of an idea toolbox as we can. And I think that's really where the formal education process can come in.
So well said. This is exactly why I wanted you on the show. Elizabeth, you're fabulous.
Thank you for being such a fantastic conversation partner. Like, I love being able to talk about this. And I think that, especially like I said, I focus on resilience. And so I spend a lot of time talking about how to survive and get through and make the
Yeah.
impossible happen. That I think it's really important to often step back and think about the joys of being able to share this knowledge and facilitate these connections and remind people that there are others out there that are navigating this same wild landscape with you, and that we are each other's best resources. So thank you for having me on. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely, absolutely. I want to ask you, tell me a little bit about how people can get in contact with UTD and enroll in your program.
I am findable online. Just Google Elizabeth Searing, and my email address is elizabeth.searing@utdallas.edu. Feel free to reach out to me. We have a bunch of programs, including some that we've just put together in the last couple years. I've only been at UT Dallas for about 5 years, but we've always had a really awesome MPA program, which is the master's degree that nonprofit leaders are a part of. So it's both nonprofit and government that both go toward the MPA. We also had an awesome graduate certificate, but the more that we worked in the community, the more we realized that a lot of people were really hungry for the knowledge, but maybe hadn't finished their bachelor's. And so in addition to the graduate training, we also now have a brand new undergraduate minor and an undergraduate certificate that you don't have to be a current student at UT Dallas to take advantage of. And so we have courses on how to start a nonprofit, about how to measure social impact. All of these are available at the undergraduate level, and you don't have to be a degree seeking student at UT Dallas to get these and to get the undergraduate certificate in nonprofit management and leadership, which is an actual educational credential that you can get from UT Dallas. And feel free to look me up, and I can have a conversation or send you additional material. We also now have on the graduate and undergraduate level, we recognize that the needs of nonprofit managers in the fine and performing arts field were also a little bit different, because there was a need to both have this kind of managerial understanding, but also an understanding of how the field worked in terms of facilities design, in terms of being able to put a portfolio together. And so we also have two custom certificate programs for arts management and leadership as well, that are balance of both the management part and the arts part. And so I'd be able to answer any questions about those also.
That's fantastic. And is there a particular website they should go to look at any of these things?
There are some, but like they're really quite long, so it's easier to just Google me, but I can provide some of that literature to you directly, Wendy,
Okay.
and then it
Yeah, and
can
I can put
be,
it in our show notes so
yeah,
we can link to everything for them there. Yeah.
awesome.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Elizabeth. It has been a pleasure. Hopefully, we can do this again sometime. I'm sure we both have plenty to chat about. So, thanks, guys, for joining. And that's today's Nonprofit Nook.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the Nonprofit Nook. We're building better nonprofits together. If you found today's episode helpful, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with other nonprofit leaders who need support. Follow the Nonprofit Nook on social media and sign up for our email list for extra tips and updates. You can also visit thenonprofitnook.com to see the show notes and leave a comment telling me what topics you want next. Your feedback shapes the show. See you next time.